Hello and welcome to another one of my videos. This is the start of the February vlog. So I'm going to talk about what my plans are for February and what I have already done in the first part of February. So today is the 8th of February and so far this month the only crafting I've really done is this in front of me. And this is my temperature blanket. I did plan to do the months of November and December throughout the whole of February and just take my time doing it. But I got a wave of energy while I was off work at the beginning of February and I just powered through. There were some days where I did 20 odd rows in one day and there were some days where I only did one or two. And let me tell you, those days where I did a lot of rows, boy did I ache afterwards. It was really hard to do that many rows in one day and it really took a toll on my back and my wrists, so I had to do a lot of stretching afterwards. But it is done. I mean, it's not done because I still need to finish it up. I still need to weave in all these knots that are on the inside. I still need to weave in all my ends. I still need to block it and I still need to add a border. So it's not done, but it's done. I have put all of the colours in now. So this is all of the colours. What you're seeing here is the end of November and the whole of December. I did think it was quite nice with December that it ended with the 4 greens as a gradient. So the last 4 rows were the 4 different greens going from lightest to darkest. And I just did a slip stitch bind off on the top here because I'm going to add a border at some point, hopefully this month, but maybe into March. So yes, as a project, as a crochet project, this is done. I am going to spend the rest of this month working on this, weaving in my ends, blocking it, and just see how far I get. But because it is finished in terms of crochet, other than the border, but for the main body of it, I am going to pick a new project for March when we get there. I'm going to do a video probably late March, maybe April, where I talk about some of the stats, what I enjoyed about this, what I didn't enjoy about it, but I won't do that until I have completely finished it with the border, the weaving in the ends, etc. So that will be coming when this is fully finished as a project. So the next project that I'm going to work on this month is my knitting project. So my plan for my knitting this month is to knit some ear warmers. So I'm just going to do some basic ear warmers. I'm not going to do anything fancy. They're just going to be in normal knit stitch. But the technique that I'm going to try this month that I've never tried before is knitting more than one thing on the circular needles at a time. So having 2 projects on the go. Now obviously previously I've seen this done with sleeves for jumpers and people doing it with socks. Obviously I'm not knitting socks and at this stage I'm not knitting sleeves for a jumper, but when I get to that point where I maybe knit some socks or I maybe knit some sleeves for jumpers, I want to be able to do the technique where I have more than one thing on my needles at once. So I'm knitting both of the arms at once or I'm knitting up both the socks at once. Now I have 3 yarns here. These 3 yarns are all the same weight and gauge, roughly. There's minor things. For example, I think this one was 22 stitches per 4 inches and this one was like 24 stitches per 4 inches or something like that. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but they were all very similar. So I figured if I was going to do it, these were the best ones to do it with. I'm going to cast on these 2 first and I'm going to see how they fit. And if I think there is room, I'm going to cast this one on. If there's not room, I'm going to cast this one on to separate needles and just again work on my magic loop technique. Obviously this is the first time I'm working with this technique and so I don't know what the best method is. I have done a little bit of research, but I'm also sort of trialing as I go, seeing how things go. If this is completely wrong, please let me know down in the comments below. But my plan is to cast this one on and then to knit a few rows before I bring it off onto the onto the stitch saver. And what my thinking is with that is that it will be a bit more stable to cast on and knit a few rows and then bring it off than it would just to bring my cast on off. Now, obviously, as I said, I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I'm going to try. That's what I'm going to go with. Obviously, when I then cast this one on, I will knit a few rows to get it into the same position as this one before I put this one back on the needles. If I go with all three, the principle will apply, but obviously just for all three instead of just the two. The reason I'm going to do these two first is because they are the most similar in terms of texture. This one, if you see both of these, they're quite similar in texture, whereas this one is quite a different texture. This is an alpaca yarn and it's quite fluffy. So I'm going to start with these two, see how I get on, potentially add this one. If not, I'll cast this one on to separate needles and then we'll just see how I go. So now I'm going to cast this one on. I'm not sure exactly how many stitches I'm going to cast on at the moment. My aim is to have the ear warmer be about 5 inches. So I need about 10 inches of stitches in total. So I'm going to measure out 4 lots of 10 inches as my long tail and then cast on and just see. We can always bring it out. We can always frog it out if we need to. Okay, so I have done 2 rows of knit stitch with my brown yarn. So I'm now going to transfer it onto the stitch saver and get started with my white yarn. Based on how this is working up with the magic loop, I definitely don't have space for the 3 different yarns, but I'm definitely going to do 2 and see how that goes. So now I have both the projects on the needle and the plan is to just start knitting. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so I can already see an issue in that my working yarn is on different sides for both of the projects. So I'm going to have to remove this project and see if I can get the working yarn on the same side. So I'm here to provide the final update for February of the things that I've got done this month. It's not the most exciting update because February just didn't quite go as crafty as I would have liked it to go. While I was off work for a little bit, I was just really busy and I had a lot going on with work while I was at work. I had a big CPD event to prepare for. So overall, I just didn't get as much time to craft as I would have liked to. But I will provide an update on what I did get done, and I will then let you know a little bit about what I'm going to do in March, and hopefully March will be a much more crafty month than February has been. So in one of my last clips, I talked about my temperature blanket. So I did actually get the stitching done on my temperature blanket. So all the coloured rows are now done, and I finished off the stitching with a slip stitch row. So on that now, I just need to weave in the ends and block it and do the border. So you can see some weaved in ends here. I have weaved in some ends, but not as many as I would have liked to by the end of the month, given that I finished this right near the beginning of the month. But sometimes things just don't go to plan. So I will be finishing this in March. Obviously, I set myself a little schedule of different projects that I'm going to do each month. I'm not going to keep this as my crochet project for March, just because although I've got to put a border on it, the majority of the crochet is done, and I don't want to not have a crochet project just because I'm weaving in ends. So that's my update on my temperature blanket. Obviously it is finished, all the rows have been done, but I still have a lot of finishing off work to do in the next month or so. So next we'll talk about cross stitch. If you watched my January video, you will know that this was the cross stitch I was working on in January, and my plan was to work on this in February. I think I said in that video that I'd like to try and get the colours done. As you can see, it's not much further along. In fact, it isn't any further along than when I left it in January. I haven't worked on this, I just haven't had time, and when I have had time to craft, I was doing my temperature blanket and I was doing my weaving in my ends and doing some knitting. So I haven't worked on this at all this month. Obviously this will carry over to March as my cross stitch project for March, and hopefully I can progress on this a bit more in March. So we will see how that goes. For my other craft project, I was going to do this little turtle, but again, like with the cross stitch, it just didn't get done. It's been an absolutely crazy month, and yeah, it just didn't happen. So in terms of knitting, obviously I said that I was going to work on 3 skeins and try and make them into ear warmers. So here are the updates on them. As you can see with this As you can see, I ended up doing them separately and not all 3 on one, and that's just because it wouldn't fit. But I am doing these 2 on this one, and I did the alpaca one on separate needles. So as you can see, the alpaca one I have actually worked up quite a bit, not as much as I wanted to, but a fair bit. I've only got a little bit of this skein left, and obviously as you can see, it's not long enough to make an ear warmer yet. I think having crocheted for a long time, I underestimated the yarn that I would need for knitting, so I didn't buy enough, but I did go out and buy another skein of this, so I am going to finish this one off as a whole with the new yarn that I've got. It's working up really nicely actually. It is a very sheddy yarn, so I do find myself covered in fluff once I've been working with this one, but I am definitely getting better at magic loop. As if you can see right at the beginning here, there is some laddering where I was using the magic loop, but here near the top where I've been doing the more recent stuff, there is no laddering at all. So I am definitely getting better at using the magic loop, and that's what these projects are all about: practicing, learning new skills and getting better at the skills that I have. So that's the update on the alpaca one. With these 2, I didn't get very far at all. I think when I did have time to knit, I prioritised using the alpaca. I have done a few rows of each, so they're both about 5 rows in at the moment, or 6 rows in, so not very far at all. With these 2, obviously now that I've seen how far the skein of alpaca got me, I think that it's very unlikely that I will be able to make 2 separate ear warmers out of these 2 separate skeins. So what I'm going to do, rather than going out and buying another one of each of these skeins like I did with the alpaca, I'm going to work these up as I am working them up now as 2 separate tubes, because I want to continue working on practicing the skill of having 2 things on the circular needles at once. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to attach them and essentially have like a half and half ear warmer. They're quite tonally similar, obviously very contrasting colours, but quite tonally similar. So I'm hoping that they look quite good together as like a half and half ear warmer. So in terms of knitting, obviously these will carry over to March, and these will be my March projects still. I'm actually hoping to do a lot more work on these in March. So that is a very quick update of where I ended up in February with my crafting. Obviously it wasn't quite as much crafting as I would have liked to have done, but overall I did get some done, which I'm proud of, and obviously worked on some skills and things like that. So overall I'm happy with what I got done. I just would have liked to have got a bit more done, but we've got March. So moving into March, I'm hoping to get a lot more done, have a bit more time for crafting, and hoping to see some finished projects by the end of March. As I go towards the end of March, I will be trying to finish up projects that I have on the go so that they're not still waiting for me when I get back from my holiday. I might also do a little segment in my March video or at the beginning of my April video where I talk about what I'm packing craft-wise to go on my trip. I'm going to be traveling a very long way, so I'm going to need a lot of crafts to take with me, and I will do a bit of a talk through what I'm taking with me, how I'm packing it, etc., just to take you along on my crafting journey while I travel as well. So hopefully that's something to look forward to in my videos, and hopefully by the end of March I will have a few more finished projects to show you. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you have a good crafting month.